Are you just being quiet, are you, Norman? You, it is. I knew it was a tag team. I thought that, yes, there you are. Andrew, bless his man. There you go.
Thank you. Right. Thank you so much for allowing me to share some of my passion for caring for creation with you today. I understand that you have been studying this excellent book by Dave Buckless called Making a World of Difference, which you've all read, I'm sure. And we come on to the last part of the book today, which is what does this mean for the church? What does this mean for the church? So what are we actually going to do about it? And I think there are some important things. The first thing is to get involved. To get involved, not to just sit on the sidelines, to get involved and to be actively involved, to be doing something practical and getting actively involved, but also to be excited about it. It's wonderful, as Andy said, to be living on the edge of the Peak District and to be excited about it and excited about God's creation. And we should be excited. And the reason we should be excited is being excited about things is infectious. And that's why we should be excited about the gospel message, because that is infectious. And creation care is part of that whole gospel message. So let's be excited about it. I find, too, that learning about creation enhances our worship. When I learn more and more about how creation works, I am just amazed. Just before we were coming out, well, I was catching up on the Americas, which I hadn't seen. We've got that on iPlayer. And there was this little bee going round collecting different smells and blending them up into a nice smell to attract a female bee. Now, isn't that just amazing? Isn't that just amazing? And when I hear something like that, I just want to praise God and I want to say, Lord, you are amazing and creative. And also we should be inspiring others and witnessing to others, especially young people. The future for creation depends not on people like us so much, but on inspiring the 5-year-olds that are coming into this world and taking part in creation care. So let's think about inspiring the whole range of ages. One of the things we can do, and I think probably as Christians we haven't done enough, is get involved in all these great organisations that there are. So you can get involved with the RSPB, with the WWT, with the Woodland Trust, with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, with the Marine Conservation Society. Actually, most of these organisations would tell you that they are utterly dependent upon their membership. You may only give £30 a year, but that £30 as part of everybody's £30 makes a big difference, and they can spend it on caring for creation. But also, when you get involved with these people in these organisations, you're able to take the Lord Jesus Christ with you when you go to events, and to witness at these events, and to be actively involved in them. So it's vitally important that we're involved in those, because they have a lot more heft. They can do things. They can lobby government in a way that we are not as able to do. And, of course, you can be involved in a Rosh. Now, I know you all know about a Rosh, caring for God's earth, the Christians in conservation, and you know about their outlook on things, and you've had a lot said about a Rosh. And I've been involved in a Rosh for many years now, but I've recently become a little bit more involved because I've got a little bit more time on my hands, and Rosh, as you will know, have got partners in action. So different partner organisations across the country, different projects of varying sizes that they're involved with. There are currently 58 projects. I think the Leabrook Valley was number 5, was it? Or number 1. There you go. So you've a lot to be proud about. You've a lot to be proud about with the Leabrook Valley. And there's 38 awaiting assessment. So over the years, the number has gone like that. And a Rosh is really struggling to cope with the number of people wanting to get involved, which is great. But that has led to some issues which we'll talk about in a bit. So you're all aware of the Leabrook Valley, and there's Mum and Dad sat on a bench, having, of course, done all the work. But it's great to be involved with a project on the doorstep. Crofton Baptist Church, unfortunately, is nowhere near a space like the Leabrook Valley. And so you've got a tremendous opportunity to be involved in caring for creation, to improve the biodiversity of this area, and also to be a witness to the community around. So you say, well, it's all right you're coming tonight, but we're all doing it. Come on, clear off. But there's always more you can do. And I want to ask you, do you know which species of beetle inhabit the Leabrook Valley? You might be interested to know that over a quarter, that's 400,000 species, a quarter of the world's total number of species are beetles. I'm sure God has a penchant for beetles. And they are wonderful things. But here's a gap. I've never heard Dad mention you've got a beetle expert. Why not? Read it up. Make yourself a beetle expert. Do you know what ladybirds inhabit the Leabrook Valley? There are an amazing number of British ladybirds. I forget how many now. But there's quite a lot of different ones. Do you know which ones are coming to the Leabrook Valley? Do you know which species of centipede inhabit the Leabrook Valley? I bought myself a book about centipedes. And it is astonishing the number of variety of centipedes. And all these fascinating things you can get involved with. There are, I think it's 18 different species of woodlouse. It might be more, I forget now the exact thing, but there are plenty of different woodlouses. Now, you see, the point of this is, actually, you might be saying, well, it's quite difficult to identify flowers and all these other things, but actually, some things are more difficult than others. All you've got to do is turn over a stone or a log, and there'll be a woodlouse there you can identify. You don't have to be rushing around. You don't have to have special equipment. You might have to just have a microscope lens, but apart from that. So there's lots of things. Do you know what mammals are in the Leabrook Valley? Have you done a mammal survey? I don't know. I've never heard Dad say you've done. You might have done. But so there's lots of things to get to grips with. Now, of course, if you're to get to grips with all those things, you need lots of people. And the killer one is flies. Anybody an expert on Diptera? No? No, Diptera, the flies. That is the ultimate expert's field. If you ever find somebody that can identify a fly, then they're doing really well. I went to Raynham Marshes a little while ago, and I thought I was seeing things. because there were flying capital T's flying all over. And that was St. Mark's fly, which flies with its body horizontal and its legs dangling down. And they are quite amazing. So flies, amazing things. But which flies are in the Rebel vote? So you've got a great opportunity to get involved. So Partners in Action, as I've said, it's been growing. So they've instituted now a number of regional conservation advisors. Now, that sounds very grand. And it's not grand, I can assure you. The idea is to support the Partners in Action staff and to encourage them and pray with them and for them. Often, these people are one-man bands. They're the only person employed. They're running around like headless chickens trying to do all sorts of things. There are lots of competing things they could be doing, and it is quite stressful, and it's also quite lonely. And they need encouraging. So encourage people if you know people that are in those kind of roles. They can be very isolated roles. We're to provide advice or access to advice, visits to encourage them, and any personal expertise. So in my case, my expertise is in moth trapping. I'm a lepidopterist, if you want the correct word there. So I'm providing some help to them. So I go to Nolan's farm near Barkham in East Sussex. It's 300 acres, farmed with nature in mind. They do a lot of nightingale events where lots of people come in groups to listen to the nightingales. By managing the farm accordingly, they've increased the number of nightingale pairs singing in on the farmland. They've also got 9 species of bat and goshawk, and these 4 little wonderful chaps are just some of the things that I found while I was walking round one afternoon in the summer of Nolan's farm. And I'm not going to bore you with all their names, but aren't they lovely? I've also been to Nettle Hill in Warwickshire. Now, that site's changing hands at the moment, so what will happen to it, we're not quite sure. But that was a conference centre and retreat, and they did things like forest school for kids, muddy church sessions. They've got grassland, woodlands and ponds, and there's a lovely moulin moth, which was a first for me in that situation. And then Staining Down in West Sussex, that has 165 acres of the Whiston estate. It's owned by a Christian family in the South Downs National Park, and they have star fruit, which is quite a rare plant. I'm not going to say its Latin name there. They do community and family events. They've got grassland, they've got woodlands, they've got ponds, and they do late-night glowworm hunts, and they do lots with schools. And my role there has been to have regular meetings with Matthew, who is one of these isolated people. He's got one part-time person with him. He's trying to do all the applications for grants. He's trying to keep the site running, keep the adjacent farmers happy, keep the cattle grazing, to keep the chalk downland, which is really, really important habitat. And he feels really pressured. He's only part-time, so it's been a great encouragement to him just to have somebody every 6 weeks. I Zoom in for half an hour, we swap information, then I pray for him. And that's a really good thing to do. The other thing I've done is go on BioBlitz. You can't protect species if you don't know what is there. If you don't know what species you've got, you don't know what you've got to protect. So it's important to know what each of these Partners in Action sites have. And I'm sure you've done some work on this kind of thing. So how can you protect the species if you don't know that they're there? So I visited the St. Maddock Christian Centre on the Gower Peninsula. Now, I'd never been to the Gower Peninsula. Anybody not been to the Gower Peninsula? Right. highly recommended. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful. It really is wonderful. That's a map of the site, so you can see it's a coastal site, lots of grassland, woodland, coastal areas, and this is some of the views. That's over the top of the centre. You can see it's rather beautiful. That's up looking towards the coast. And then that's the coastline, which is really rather stunning. And fortunately, the weather was quite good most of the time we were there. Not all of the time. We did have some rain, it being Wales. That was the centre. And I did a lot of moth trapping. So some day-flying moths there, yellow shell, fern, pretty chalk carpet. And then overnight, I trapped on several nights. And I had some really stunning moths. They were long-winged pearl, green archers, reddish light archers. Of course, because we were by the shore wainscot, and a number of shore specialists, including crescent dart, another shore specialist, coronet and lackey there. White line dart, another shore specialist. Antler moth. Double line, which is a species that's restricted to the Wales area. Small rivulet. Sand dart and archer's dart, other coastal species again. And garden tiger, which is really quite a stunning moth if you've never seen a garden tiger. And I mean, it's about that big, so it's not a small moth. I had 79 different species of moth on that one site, 8 species of butterfly, and I had 14 new species that were new to me. So it was quite an exciting time for me and a lovely, lovely place to visit. But now, St Maddock know what moths they've got, whereas they didn't before, or at least they know some of the moths they've got at a particular time of year. Also been to the Abernethy Trust site at Kilmaloo, and I think you know something about this, but I'll run through it very quickly. So we did a bow blitz there in June 24, that's the centre. If any of you want to go and have a retreat up there and just spend some nice time in a lovely place and just chill out, highly recommend that. Get in touch with Kilmaloo, and they'd love to have you there. I trapped in this area of woodland primarily, although I did move the traps around various areas. There's a lot of shoreline as well, different habitats. They did some bird ringing, so there's a swallow being caught and ringed. They looked for plants in some rather dangerous looking places there. I wasn't with them there. I was dealing with moths at the time. So all sorts of different plants. Beautiful, beautiful plants. And they climbed the mountain to look for different plants and birds as well, and some lovely views from the top of the mountain. Looking down onto the centre there, you can see. And it really is a fantastic area. So I highly recommend going up there. It's a long way to go, but it is well worth it when you get there. Only don't rely on nipping down to the shops, because it's 18 miles to the nearest shop. And we had a beetle expert, and these are some things that he found: door beetle and dung beetle and all sorts of other little things. Longhorn beetle there. And lots of lichen and mosses and associated species, liverworts and so on. Amazing all around this lush woodland. And there I am. Having caught the moths in the traps, I'm now looking at them, and then comes the really nice part, because then comes the part when, having identified them and photographed them, you open the box and you let them fly away, and they get their freedom again. And it's amazing to see how far they do fly, how quickly, actually. They're amazingly quick. So a range of moths here, so drinker, dew moth, which is quite a rare one, clouded buff, all sorts of wonderful names they have, rattle pearl there, four-dotted footman, eyed rush moth, a really tiny one-eyed rush moth, large emerald, that's quite a large one, northern egger, so poplar hawk moth, beautiful, beautiful moths. So my question to you is, what can you do to bring glory to God, to please God, to serve God, to spread the gospel message as you care for his creation? Thank you for your attention. And I'll take any questions, not that I should be able to answer them, I'm sure, but I will take questions if you have any. And you can always find me afterwards, if not.
Whereabouts in Scotland is that amazing place?
So you go up towards Fort William and across the Corran Ferry and then down the peninsula opposite. So it looks out onto Lismore Island, if you know that area. But it is absolutely stunningly beautiful. So, yeah, there we are.
Andrew, how do you identify a beetle? How do you find it in the first place?
Well, you can find it. You can find beetles in all sorts of environments, turning over logs, in the undergrowth, on plants. Beetles are really quite ubiquitous when you come to look for them. And most of them, I mean, there are very distinctive species. There are, like any species, like any group of species, there are some tricky ones, but there are plenty of books around, and of course, the more you get into it, the better you get at it. A lot of it is just practice, you know, and it's amazing. It's another amazing thing about creation, how amazing our brains are. You know, I can look instantly in a moth trap now and I can say, oh, there's a Hebrew character. But, you know, I never could before. You just get into it and develop an expertise. And like moths, there are all sorts of different sizes and shapes of beetle.
What sort of things are people putting in place to protect these species?
So the best thing you can do is concentrate on the different types of habitat. I mentioned staining down. Staining down, as I said, is chalk grassland. Chalk grassland across the world is an extremely precious habitat. It's a very distinctive habitat, chalk grassland. But it's also a very difficult habitat to maintain. So there are lots of specialist species, but the problem with chalk grassland is if you don't keep it properly grazed and properly managed, it very quickly reverts to scrub, and then scrub to small woodland, and then proper woodland. And so maintaining these areas of chalk grassland is really important. Of course, when we had a lot more grazing agriculture and things like that, they were more easily maintained. But it is a critical environment, chalk grassland. So it's about providing the habitats. And you see this with the work of the RSPB in providing reed beds for bitterns to come back, and the bittern population has increased enormously. If you give nature the opportunity, there's a big push on at the moment with turtle doves, and creating the right habitat for turtle doves, because the biggest factor in the decline of turtle doves is their habitat's been lost. Similarly with things like corncrake. At one time you could hear corncrake right across the UK because agricultural practices were different. That's another factor. And of course, what is becoming clearer and clearer is that in this rush for agriculture to get the maximum out of the land in the maximum in the minimum amount of time, pouring fertilizers on it and all this sort of thing, it's all backfiring. Because we're now realizing that it's not the best way to manage things. And environmental farming is proving to be much more productive in the long term than a lot of the methods that were used 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So that's where these species are getting a foothold back, where these wonderful farmers are doing a great job saying, no, we're going to do it differently. We're going to do it differently. And if you listen to Farming Today, if you're up at some silly o'clock in the morning or you catch it on BBC Sounds, I don't always catch it. I sometimes catch Farming Today this week where you get a roundup. But you'll know that a lot of farmers are doing a tremendous amount for maintaining wildlife and encouraging wildlife. And the sad thing is that they're not getting the support they should from government. And this ELMS scheme was trumpeted, and it was going to do this and that and the other, and gradually it's reined back and back and back, and it's not doing what it should be doing. So it's basically about protecting habitat is the biggest issue.
I think we're all old enough here to remember times when there were 50 sparrows on your garden and flies hitting your windscreen and loads of species and birds and starlings by the thousands on your and they've all seemed to have disappeared. You might have answered the question that it's habitat, but what's sort of causing this, and is there any way to sort of stop it?
Really? It really is just loss of habitat.
Yeah.
It really is just loss of habitat and changing farming practices.
Because the land, I mean, Johnfield hasn't changed much since I was a kid, and places around it. So
but farming practices have, and that's what's changing back in the Eastern Moors project that the RSPB are doing, because they're working closely with the farmers to farm slightly differently. Sometimes just delaying what you do in the field allows the lapwing to bring its chicks up. It's about delaying the... And I have to say, I mean, Dad and I have been going out into Derbyshire for many, many years. Dad a lot longer than me, but we went out yesterday and we saw a few jackdaws, a few rooks, one buzzard. Years ago, we would have seen dozens and dozens of things. Now it's still there, but it's in much reduced numbers. We saw one lapwing, but it really needs help. And you've got a really great area there, the Eastern Moors, and I hope as things build up, and of course these things are not quick. The RSPB is working with the Eastern Moors, but it won't be quick. I think I better let Dad take over.
What? No? Oh, okay. I had a question.
Go on, carry on.
Just thinking about all those thousands and thousands of species of whatever, but moths, for instance, I don't know how many there are.
2,574, thereabouts.
Right, okay. Do we actually see adaptation in actually happening? When we look at like ourselves and lots of other animals, we don't see change really, not that much. Have people been monitoring it? Are new species?
I don't think there's a lot of. There's not a lot of. There's nothing like that really. What the only thing that is noticeable is things driven by climate change. So certain, as with birds, certain moth species that like a certain type of temperature are moving north, and certain species are now coming in from the continent that did not used to. So, and this is true of birds and of moths, but of also a range of different species. Now, of course, and we've not helped with things. I mean, we have a distinct problem which government are monitoring with Asian hornet. The Asian hornet coming in. I mean, I went to a presentation about it, and I would encourage you, if you've got a local group that gives a talk about Asian hornet, go and find out. It is horrifying, absolutely horrifying. They are devastating when they come in because they're the wrong thing in the wrong place. I mean, it's like our ringneck parakeets around our area, which are an absolute pest because they're the wrong thing in the wrong place. But that sort of invasive species is starting to come in. And of course, the government are working very hard. The Zoological Society of London run a big program to monitor mosquitoes for the ingress of malaria-carrying mosquitoes.
Well, I'm glad they're doing that.
And there's a lot of concern that if the climate continues to warm, we're going to struggle with diseases like that we've never struggled with in the UK.
Part of my question really about the adaptation was that a lot of what you're talking about, the species seem incredibly well adapted to different environments, which is right. I understand that. But, cast your mind back a few hundred years and it was all forest here. So a lot of the specialization wasn't there. But so were the species all here then?
The species were, because there were other sorts of habitat. There was a lot more habitat in total and specialist areas for those particular species.
They've adapted as this has massively changed, and it might change again, for instance, if climate action means there's going to be less grazing, for instance, there's less animals, less grazing. I think things are going to be changing again.
Rather than adapt, what's happened is species have just declined. A lot of the moth species that were prevalent in particular habitats have really declined.
So do we say that all the species were there forever?
Well,
and it's just a process of them declining all the time as things change?
I don't think I'm qualified to answer that. I don't think I have the facts available to me.
It's getting a bit technical.
I think I'll take the fifth on that one. Okay. Dad's going to come and be far more interesting. At least he's going to be challenging.
It's a brilliant place. I wanted to go back this year just for a holiday, but it's a long way to drive, and we tend to always be doing that, so we decided to try and be more local. But if you want to go, it's a lovely place, nice people. If you like walking, the estate itself is 3,000 acres. And you go from the sea to the top of the mountain in about, 200 or 300 yards. It's very difficult to get to the top. I didn't go to the top, I couldn't do it. But it is interesting, and they are running some specialist weeks, like they might do a bird watching week, they might do a week looking for flowers or something like that, a photography week. And they're trying to develop, because it's a new thing, they're trying to develop these different holidays. And when you get there, you've got pine martens running around. You've got all this wildlife, which is absolutely brilliant. First bird I saw was a spotted flycatcher, and I haven't seen one of them for years. However, follow that. When I was working at college, we had a thing. What you tried to do was get them all working so you could sit and mark your own work that you'd got to do. I can't stop wandering about, I'm like you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you some sheets to have a look at. Now, in this book, Dave Buckler's, you get to page 65, and it says, what does this mean for the church? Well, that's important, but what does it mean for you? So what I want you to do now is brainstorm yourselves. I'm going to give you some of these.
Do you want me to pass them round?
Right, I'll keep this one. So on one side, you've got page 65 and 64 from your book. So if you've got your book, turn to 65 and 64. And then on the back, I've put action. Action. I've put P, C, and B. P stands for personal action. That's what we're going to do as individuals. C stands for action we can do as a church. And B is both, because some of the action we can do as individuals, we could also do as a church. So I want you to put down the action that you think is possible, and then enter it in onto these sheets. If you brought your book, that's fine. Now, first of all, Dave Buckler's, what he's done here is spent a lot of pages looking at examples all over the world of what people have done. So tonight, Andrew has told you what he's been doing. It's a bit more local. Now, on page 65, you've got a list of questions. They're not all easy to answer. You don't have to answer them all. Pick 4 or 5 out and have a look at them and see if you can think of things that you could do to help. Now, before we do that, I'd like somebody to read the paragraph on page 64 to get us going. Anybody? Page 64, there's a paragraph. It says what this means for the church, and underneath it, give it me, I'll put it out to the end. What this does, it gets us started. It starts off, the Bible's big story. Would somebody read that paragraph for us? Thank you.
The Bible's big story of God's purposes for all creation, from Genesis to Revelation, should not just change our thinking, it should also transform our priorities as individuals, churches, and Christian organisations. Christians and churches have been inspired to respond in practical action in many different ways and in different places.
Right, just before you start, don't worry about your answers. No answer is wrong. Do you understand? Just put down whatever you think we could do as a church or as individuals. And it's not going to be marked or anything, so you can just get on and let your mind wander and have a go and see what we can do. Any questions? Right, on your way.
Can I just give a notice about, unfortunately, next Wednesday, I think it's the Canal and Rivers Trust are going to have a meeting in the Life premises about the state of the River Drone. The water company monitors it to Stocksbridge, sorry, not Stocksbridge, what do they call it? The big Sheep Bridge. I'm thinking of the wrong town. But nothing from here on, and lots of people have said how disgusting the water is. It's very cloudy.